Lena Fletcher's bones ached with a weariness that had nothing to do with her double shift and everything to do with the weight of the world on her shoulders. The fluorescent lights of the hospital corridor hummed a monotonous, soul-draining tune, a soundtrack to her exhaustion. She was tired. She was hungry. She was so profoundly alone. Her scrubs, a pale blue now faded to a ghostly white in places, felt thin and scratchy against her skin. They were a constant reminder of her status, not just as a nurse, but as someone living on the very edge of solvency. She had mended the seam on the left leg twice already, the thread a slightly darker blue than the worn fabric, a small visible scar of her financial struggle. In her pocket, her fingers found the crumpled eviction notice. The paper was soft and pliable from how many times she had unfolded and refolded it, as if rereading the stark, black letters would somehow change their meaning. Final notice. The words were a brand on her mind. 14 days. 14 days to find a miracle, or she and her younger brother Marcus would be out on the street. The thought of Marcus sent a fresh wave of anxiety through her. He was only 17, a brilliant kid with a scholarship offer to a state university waiting for him, an offer contingent on him maintaining his grades and his residency. He deserved the world, a world free from the constant worry that shadowed their lives. He deserved a full fridge and the simple peace of mind of knowing where he would sleep next month. Lena was failing him. She pushed through the heavy glass doors of the hospital, the cool night air a brief, sharp shock against her warm face. The city air was thick with the smell of exhaust fumes and damp pavement, a stark contrast to the sterile, antiseptic world she had just left. For 12 hours, she had been a bastion of calm and competence, administering medication, changing dressings, holding the hands of the sick and the scared. She was Nurse Fletcher, reliable, kind, and professional. Out here, under the sickly orange glow of the streetlights, she was just Lena. A 26-year-old woman whose bank account held exactly $43.17. A woman who had skipped lunch and dinner to make sure the gas tank in her sputtering 20-year-old sedan had enough fuel to get her home and back again tomorrow. Her car, a monument to rust and hope, was parked in the furthest corner of the employee lot. It was a long walk, and with every step, the professional mask she wore inside the hospital walls began to crumble. The ache in her feet, a dull throb from hours of standing, sharpened into a piercing complaint. A headache began to bloom behind her eyes. She fumbled for her keys, the metal cold in her trembling hand. Inside the car, the scent of old coffee and the faint, sweet smell of the air freshener her mother had hung from the rearview mirror years ago greeted her. It was a pink, heart-shaped thing, its scent long faded. But Lena could never bring herself to throw it away. Her mother. The thought was a familiar, painful pang in her chest. Amelia Fletcher had been a nurse, too, a legend on her floor. She had walked these same hospital corridors, her spirit bright and unwavering. She had taught Lena everything, not just about medicine, but about dignity, about compassion, about looking past the surface and seeing the person underneath. "Everyone is fighting a battle you know nothing about, baby girl," she used to say, her voice warm and sure. "Be kind. Always." Tears pricked at the corners of Lena's eyes. It was so much harder to be kind when your own world was falling apart. Her mother had passed away 2 years ago, a sudden, shocking illness that had stolen the light from their lives and saddled them with a mountain of medical debt. That debt was the anchor that was dragging Lena under. She started the car, and the engine protested with a series of coughs and sputters before finally catching with a rattling groan. She prayed it would hold out. It had to. It was her lifeline, her only means of getting to the job that was barely keeping their heads above water. The drive home was a blur of traffic lights and dark storefronts. Her apartment was in a part of town that was politely called up and coming, but in reality had been struggling for decades. The building was old, the brickwork crumbling, the lobby smelling faintly of boiled cabbage and despair. She climbed the 3 flights of stairs, her legs feeling like lead. Inside, the apartment was small and sparsely furnished, but immaculately clean. Marcus was asleep on the lumpy sofa, a textbook open on his chest. His face, so much like their mother's, was peaceful in sleep, and for a moment, Lena's heart ached with a fierce, protective love. She gently took the book from him and placed a thin blanket over his shoulders. He didn't stir. She watched him for a long moment, the rise and fall of his chest. This was why she fought. This was why she endured the double shifts, the hunger, the constant grinding worry. For him, for his future. In the kitchen, she opened the refrigerator. The sight was bleak. A half-empty carton of milk, a single egg, a wilting head of lettuce, and a jar of mustard. That was it. Her stomach growled, a hollow, empty sound in the quiet apartment. $43. It had to last them until her next paycheck, which was still a week away. She closed the refrigerator door gently, her shoulders slumping in defeat. She felt the familiar sting of failure. She was working herself to the bone, yet she couldn't even afford to buy groceries. What would her mother think of her now? But then, another of her mother's lessons surfaced in her mind. It came to her as clearly as if Amelia were standing right there beside her. Gratitude, Lena. Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, find something to be grateful for. It's the only way to keep the darkness out. Taking a deep breath, Lena walked over to a small, worn wooden box on the windowsill. It was her mother's gratitude box. Inside were scraps of paper, each with something written on it. Lena pulled out a pen and a small notepad from a drawer. She thought for a moment. What could she possibly be grateful for right now? The eviction notice loomed. The fridge was empty. But she forced herself to think. Marcus. She was grateful for Marcus. She wrote it down. Marcus is safe and asleep. Her job. As hard as it was, she had one. I have a job that helps people. Her car. As unreliable as it had gotten her home. My car started. She even found gratitude for the single egg in the fridge. She could make it for Marcus's breakfast tomorrow. There is an egg for Marcus's breakfast. She folded the small piece of paper and placed it in the box with the others. It was a small act, a tiny flicker of light in the overwhelming darkness. But it was something. It was a choice to focus on what she had, not on what she lacked. It was an act of defiance against the despair that threatened to consume her. On the counter, next to a stack of overdue bills, sat a small canvas bag. It was for the hospital's annual food drive. Every year, Lena contributed something, even if it was just a few cans of soup. This year, she had nothing to spare. The thought shamed her. How could she preach compassion and not practice it? She looked at the $43 in her wallet. An idea, reckless and foolish, sparked in her mind. She could take $20 and buy some non-perishables for the food drive. It would leave her with almost nothing. It was a terrible, irresponsible idea. But the thought of showing up with an empty bag felt worse. Her mother's voice again, a gentle whisper. Kindness isn't a transaction, Lena. You don't give to get. You give because it's right. It's who we are. She made her decision. Tomorrow, before her shift, she would go to the grocery store. She would spend 20 of her last $43 on food for people who had even less than she did. It was crazy. It was illogical. But it felt right. It felt like something her mother would have done. And in that moment, honoring her mother's memory felt more important than anything else. The next morning, the sun streamed through the thin curtains, casting a pale light on the worn floorboards. Lena was already up, having slept for only a few fitful hours. She watched Marcus eat the single scrambled egg, trying to hide the gnawing hunger in her own stomach. "You're not eating?" he asked, his brow furrowed with concern. "I ate at the hospital last night, sweetie," she lied, forcing a smile. "Big meal. I'm still stuffed." He seemed to accept it, his mind already on the calculus exam he had that day. She saw him off at the door, her heart swelling with a mixture of pride and fear. She had to hold it together. For him. True to her word, she stopped at a discount grocery store on her way to the hospital. The automatic doors hissed open, revealing aisles stacked high with food. The abundance was almost overwhelming. She walked through the store with a laser focus, her $20 bill clutched tightly in her hand. She was a savvy shopper, a skill born of necessity. She bought bags of dried beans and rice, cans of tuna, jars of peanut butter. Practical, protein-rich foods that would provide real sustenance. As the cashier rang up her items, the total came to $19.87. She was left with a single dollar bill and some change. She put the groceries into the canvas bag. It felt heavy, substantial. It was a good feeling, a feeling of purpose. For a brief moment, the weight of the grocery bag counteracted the weight of the eviction notice in her pocket. She arrived at the hospital early. The main lobby was already bustling with activity. Doctors in white coats strode purposefully. Visitors looked for directions, and the scent of strong coffee from the small cafe filled the air. Today was a special day at the hospital. A fundraising gala was being held that evening, and the administration was giving tours to wealthy potential donors throughout the day. The floors were polished to a mirror-like shine, and large, elaborate floral arrangements were everywhere. Lena was just here to drop off her food drive donation and check the schedule for extra shifts. She wasn't dressed for a gala. She was in her civvies, a simple pair of jeans, a clean but well-worn t-shirt, and her comfortable sneakers. Her hair was pulled back in a simple, neat puff. She felt a little out of place amidst the growing sense of occasion, but her purpose was simple. She headed towards the administration office where the collection point for the food drive was set up. As she crossed the wide, sunlit atrium, a commotion near the main entrance caught her attention. A small crowd was beginning to form. People were pointing, whispering, and keeping their distance. Lena's nurse instincts kicked in immediately. She moved closer, her eyes scanning for the source of the disturbance. There, on the floor near the revolving doors, an elderly man had collapsed. He was slumped against the base of a large potted plant, his face pale and clammy. His clothes were rumpled and dirty, and he looked disoriented, possibly homeless. Most people were just staring. A few had their phones out, recording. No one was helping. A security guard was approaching slowly, his hand on his radio, his expression one of weary annoyance rather than concern. "Probably just another drunk," a woman in a business suit muttered to her companion. "They should really do something about this. It's not a good look. Especially not today." Lena felt a surge of anger. A human being was in distress, and people were worried about the look of it. She saw one of her colleagues, another nurse named Brenda, standing near the information desk. Lena caught her eye. "Don't get involved, Lena." Brenda warned, shaking her head. Security will handle it. You know how management gets about these things. They'll just kick him out. It's not worth the trouble. The security guard was now standing over the man, his voice loud and impatient. All right, old-timer, let's go. You can't sleep here. Time to move along. The man didn't respond. His eyes were half closed, his breathing shallow. Lena's training screamed at her. This wasn't just a man sleeping. This was a medical situation. He could be hypoglycemic. He could be having a stroke. He could be in cardiac distress. Her mother's voice echoed in her head. Be kind. Always. The warnings from Brenda, the disapproving stares of the crowd, the potential for getting in trouble, it all faded away. There was a person who needed help. That was all that mattered. I'm a nurse, she said, her voice clear and firm as she pushed gently through the onlookers. She knelt beside the man, the hard, polished floor cold against her knees. She ignored the security guard's annoyed glare. Sir? Sir, can you hear me? She asked, her voice calm and gentle. She placed 2 fingers on his neck, feeling for a pulse. It was there, but it was thready and weak. His skin was cold and damp. I need some orange juice and a blanket now, she ordered, looking up at the security guard. The guard scoffed. I'm not getting him anything. He needs to leave. He's not drunk. He's having a medical emergency, Lena snapped, her patience gone. His pulse is weak and his skin is clammy. He could be diabetic and in shock. Now are you going to help me? Or are you going to stand there while this man dies on your floor? Her authoritative tone, the unmistakable confidence of a trained medical professional, seemed to momentarily stun the guard. He hesitated. The crowd murmured. Lena didn't wait for him. She saw the cafe nearby. She remembered the single dollar and change in her pocket. It wouldn't be enough for juice. But she had to do something. Then she remembered the vending machine down the hall. Maybe, just maybe. Stay with him, she commanded a young woman who was watching with wide, worried eyes. Talk to him. Keep him awake. Lena sprinted to the vending machine. Her hands trembled as she fed her last dollar and coins into the slot. She scanned the options. Orange juice, $1.75. Not enough. Her heart sank. Then she saw it, a small packet of peanut butter crackers, $1.25. It would have to do. The sugar and protein might be enough to make a difference. She bought the crackers and a bottle of water, exhausting her funds completely. Now she had nothing. Literally nothing. But as she ran back to the man, the canvas bag of donated food bumping against her hip, she didn't feel regret. She felt a sense of rightness. Back in the atrium, the situation had escalated. A second security guard had arrived, and with him, a woman whose presence immediately changed the atmosphere. She was tall and severe, dressed in a sharply tailored, expensive-looking gray suit. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a tight, immaculate chignon. Her heels clicked with an aggressive, rhythmic authority on the polished floor. This was Karen Preston, the hospital's chief operating officer. Lena had seen her before, striding through the halls like a queen surveying her kingdom, a wake of nervous silence following her. Karen Preston was in the middle of giving a tour to a group of 5 impeccably dressed men and women, the potential donors. Her face was a mask of controlled fury as she took in the scene. The disheveled man on the floor, the gawking crowd, and Lena now kneeling beside the man, trying to open the packet of crackers. What in God's name is going on here? Karen's voice was like ice. It cut through the low murmur of the lobby, silencing everyone. The first security guard snapped to attention. Ma'am, we have a situation. This mine person refuses to leave. Karen's eyes, cold and blue, swept over the man on the floor with utter disgust. She didn't see a patient. She didn't see a human being in distress. She saw a stain on the perfect, pristine image she was trying to project. Then her gaze landed on Lena. She took in Lena's worn jeans, her simple t-shirt, her sneakers. She saw a young black woman kneeling on the floor next to a man who looked like he lived on the streets, and she made an instant, prejudiced judgment. "And who are you?" she demanded, her voice dripping with contempt. "Are you with him? Get this filth out of my hospital, now!" Lena looked up, stunned by the venom in the woman's voice. "My name is Lena Fletcher. I'm a nurse here. This man is sick. He needs help." Karen let out a short, incredulous laugh. "A nurse? You? Dressed like that? Don't be ridiculous. I've seen you people loitering around here before. You're not a nurse. You're a trespasser, and you're disturbing our guests." The word people hung in the air, heavy and loaded. The implication was clear, and it was ugly. Lena felt a hot flush of shame and anger rise in her cheeks. The donors shifted uncomfortably. The crowd of onlookers was now filming everything with rapt attention. "I am a nurse," Lena repeated, her voice shaking slightly but firm. She tried to get her ID badge out of her jeans pocket, but her hands were fumbling with the cracker packet. "My ID is in my pocket. I work on the 4th floor. This man's blood sugar might be dangerously low. We need to—" "I don't care what you think we need to do." Karen cut her off, taking a step closer. Her voice dropped to a menacing hiss. "I care about the fact that you and this vagrant are ruining a multi-million-dollar fundraising tour. You are unprofessional. Your appearance is a disgrace. You do not belong here." She turned to the 2 security guards. "I want her out. Now, remove her from the premises, and make sure she doesn't come back." The guards looked hesitant for a split second. They both knew Lena. They saw her every day. They knew she was a nurse. But the COO had given a direct order, and her wrath was far more terrifying than the truth. "Ma'am, please," Lena begged, looking from Karen to the guards. "You don't understand. He's sick. We can't just move him." "Get your hands off me." The taller guard grabbed Lena's arm, his grip tight and painful. The canvas bag of groceries fell from her shoulder, spilling cans of tuna and bags of rice across the gleaming floor. They rolled and scattered, a pathetic display of her meager charity. The public humiliation was absolute. Laughter rippled through a few of the onlookers. Karen Preston looked down at the scattered groceries with a sneer. "Pathetic," she muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. They started to drag Lena away. She struggled, not out of defiance, but out of a desperate, professional concern for the man on the floor. "Please, listen to me. Check his vitals. Call a code team, please." Her pleas were ignored. She was being hauled towards the revolving doors like a common criminal. Her feet scraped against the polished floor. She could feel dozens of eyes on her, feel the heat of their judgment, their amusement, their pity. She saw the cold, triumphant look on Karen Preston's face. In that moment, Lena had never felt so small, so powerless, so utterly defeated. The world seemed to slow down. She saw the smirks on the faces in the crowd. She saw the lenses of the smartphones trained on her, capturing her lowest moment for an audience of strangers. She saw the cans of tuna, meant for the hungry, lying useless on the floor. She saw the sick man, his face growing paler, his life hanging in the balance, abandoned because of prejudice and pride. And then, 2 things happened at once. From the ceiling, A series of sharp, urgent beeps began to sound, followed by a calm, computerized voice that sent a jolt of pure adrenaline through every medical professional in the building. Code Blue, Atrium Lobby. Code Blue, Atrium Lobby. At the exact same moment, the revolving doors spun to a halt, and a man in a perfectly tailored dark suit stepped into the lobby. He was flanked by another man who looked like he was carved from stone. The man in the suit had an air of quiet, absolute authority. His eyes, sharp and intelligent, swept the chaotic scene. His expression turning from confusion to cold, controlled anger in a heartbeat. The code blue alarm sent the lobby into a different kind of frenzy. The gawking stopped. A crash cart team, doctors and nurses, appeared as if from nowhere, running towards the atrium. They swarmed the collapsed man, the one Karen had dismissed as filth. One of the doctors shouted, "He's in V-fib, starting compressions. Charge the paddles!" The security guards who were dragging Lena out froze, their hands still on her arms. They looked back and forth between the unfolding medical drama and the furious face of Karen Preston. But Karen's attention was no longer on them. Her eyes were fixed on the man in the dark suit, who was now striding directly towards her. "Mr. Harrison," she stammered, her voice suddenly losing all its icy command. Her face began to pale. What a surprise. We weren't expecting you." Mr. Harrison, the hospital network's chief legal counsel, did not stop until he was standing directly in front of her. His gaze was glacial. "I should think not, Ms. Preston. I'm here to meet Mr. Finch. I was told I would find him in the lobby. It appears I have." He gestured with his chin towards the man on the floor, who was now being defibrillated by the code team. "Clear!" a doctor shouted, and the man's body arched off the floor. Karen Preston's face, which had been pale, now turned the color of ash. A single bead of sweat traced a path down her temple. Mr. Finch? That can't be. He's a vagrant." Mr. Harrison's voice was dangerously quiet. "Alistair Finch, the sole owner of this hospital and every other one in the Sterling Health Network, is a notoriously private man who enjoys, as he puts it, inspecting the plumbing of his investments firsthand, without fanfare. He believes you can judge the character of an institution by how it treats the least fortunate among us. He was testing you, Ms. Preston. All of you." The world tilted on its axis. The donors, who had been watching with detached curiosity, now looked horrified. The bystanders with their phones lowered them slowly, their expressions shifting from amusement to shock. Mr. Harrison's eyes then fell on Lena, still held by the guards, her face stained with tears of humiliation and frustration. He saw the spilled groceries on the floor. He looked at the guard's hands on her arms. "And who is this young woman?" he asked, his voice dangerously soft. "And why are your security personnel assaulting her?" She was causing a disturbance," Karen stammered, her mind clearly reeling, trying to piece together a narrative that wouldn't completely destroy her. She was being unprofessional, a trespasser. Unprofessional? Mr. Harrison's eyebrows shot up. He looked at Lena, really looked at her, and saw the intelligence and compassion in her eyes, even through the tears. He saw the way she kept looking over at the code team, her body tense with concern for the patient. "Let her go," he commanded the guards. They dropped her arms as if she were on fire. Lena rubbed her bruised arms, her mind struggling to process the impossible truth. The homeless man was the owner? The billionaire owner of the entire hospital network? The code team had managed to get a rhythm back. "We have a pulse. It's weak, but it's there. Let's get him to the CVICU now. As they loaded Mr. Finch onto a gurney, his eyelids fluttered open for a brief second. His gaze, weak but lucid, found Lena's. He gave the slightest of nods, a flicker of recognition and gratitude, before his eyes closed again. Everyone saw it. Mr. Harrison saw it. He turned back to Karen Preston, his face a mask of cold fury. So, let me see if I have this correct. Mr. Finch collapses in your lobby, appearing to be in distress. This young woman, who I'm willing to bet is an employee, attempts to render aid. And you, the chief operating officer of this institution, not only prevent her from doing so, but have her assaulted and thrown out because you didn't like the look of her jeans. It wasn't, I didn't know. Karen's voice was a pathetic whisper. The foundation of her world had crumbled in less than 5 minutes. The power, the authority, the arrogance, it had all evaporated, leaving behind a terrified, trembling woman. Precisely, Mr. Harrison said, his voice like the crack of a whip. You didn't know. You judged. You saw a poor man and a young black woman. And you saw filth. You didn't see a patient in need. You didn't see a compassionate caregiver. You saw a stain on your perfect day. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number. Security control room? This is David Harrison. I want you to preserve all camera footage from the atrium for the last 30 minutes and send the CEO, Dr. Evans, to the lobby. Immediately. A new level of authority had arrived, and it was swift and absolute. Dr. Evans, a portly man with a perpetually worried expression, came scurrying out of the elevators, his face already slick with sweat. David, what's going on? I heard there was a code blue. He trailed off as he took in the scene. Karen Preston looking like she was about to faint. The scattered groceries, the stunned donors, and Mr. Harrison, whose expression promised ruin. What's going on, Robert? Mr. Harrison said, using the CEO's first name with chilling familiarity. Is that your COO just tried to have the owner of this hospital thrown out on the street while he was having a heart attack, and she had a nurse, one of your own staff, assaulted for trying to help him. Dr. Evans looked at Karen, then at Lena, and back to Mr. Harrison. The color drained from his own face. He understood the magnitude of the catastrophe immediately. This wasn't just a PR problem. This was an existential threat. Mr. Harrison's phone buzzed. He answered it, listened for a moment, and his expression softened slightly. He's stable. He's conscious and asking to speak with me. He listened again. Yes, I understand. Yes, it will be done. He hung up the phone and his gaze, now as hard as diamond, locked onto Karen Preston. That was Mr. Finch, he announced to the silent, captive audience. He has 2 messages. The first is for the young woman. He turned to Lena, his voice becoming gentle. He wants to thank you. He said you were the only person who showed him an ounce of human kindness. He wants to know your name. Lena, she whispered, her voice hoarse. Lena Fletcher. Lena Fletcher, Mr. Harrison repeated, nodding slowly. Mr. Finch will not forget that. He then turned his full, wrathful attention back to Karen. His second message is for you, Miss Preston. Karen flinched as if struck. As of this moment, Mr. Harrison declared, his voice ringing through the cavernous lobby, your employment with Sterling Health is terminated, effective immediately. Your corporate accounts will be frozen, your access revoked. Mr. Finch has instructed that you are to be escorted from the property and informed that you will be blacklisted from every major healthcare network in the country. He wishes you the best of luck in finding a career that does not require a soul. The sentence was passed. The execution was public. The same two security guards who had manhandled Lena now stepped towards Karen Preston. Their faces were grim, but there was a flicker of something else in their eyes. Ironic justice. "Ma'am, you'll need to come with us," the taller guard said, his voice devoid of the deference he would have shown her just 10 minutes earlier. "No," Karen whispered, shaking her head in disbelief. "No, you can't do this. I have worked here for 15 years. I built this place." "You built nothing," Mr. Harrison countered coldly. "You polished the floors while the heart of the institution rotted out from under you. Now please leave with what little dignity you have left." But Karen had no dignity left. She began to sob, loud, ugly, gasping sobs of a person who has lost everything and knows it is entirely their own fault. "Please, don't do this. I'll apologize. I'm sorry." Her pleas fell on deaf ears. The guards each took one of her arms, gently but firmly, and began to lead her away. The clack of her expensive heels was now a pathetic, stumbling retreat. The Queen was being frog-marched out of her own castle. As she was led away, Dr. Evans, the CEO, rushed over to Lena. He was wringing his hands, his face a mess of panic and regret. "Miss Fletcher, on behalf of the entire hospital, I am so deeply sorry. What you endured was inexcusable, unprofessional, and goes against everything we claim to stand for. Can you ever forgive us?" Lena was still in shock, her mind a whirlwind of emotions: humiliation, fear, confusion, and now a staggering sense of vindication. She looked at the worried face of the CEO, at the stunned faces of the donors, at the crowd of her fellow hospital workers who were now looking at her with a mixture of awe and respect. She found her voice, and when she spoke, it was not with anger or bitterness, but with the quiet, unshakable conviction that her mother had instilled in her. "A hospital should be a place of compassion for everyone," she said, her voice growing stronger with every word. "Everyone. It doesn't matter what they look like, what they're wearing, or how much money they have in their pocket. Sickness doesn't discriminate, and neither should we." She gestured to the scattered groceries, the sad testament to her $20 sacrifice. "I was bringing this in for the food drive, because there are people in our community who are hungry. People like the man I thought Mr. Finch was. They deserve our help, not our judgment." She looked directly at the donors, her gaze unflinching. "What happened here today? The way he was treated, the way I was treated. That's the real sickness, prejudice, and the only cure for it is kindness." A silence fell over the lobby, a profound, respectful silence. And then a single person began to clap. It was the young woman Lena had asked to stay with Mr. Finch. Then another person joined in, and another. Within seconds, the entire lobby, the doctors, the nurses, the visitors, even the chastened security guards, erupted in a wave of thunderous applause. It wasn't just for her words. It was for her actions. It was for her courage. It was for the simple, powerful truth she had spoken. Lena Fletcher, the nurse who had been dragged out in disgrace just moments before, now stood in the center of the atrium, bathed in the warm light of admiration and respect. The tears that now streamed down her face were not of shame, but of overwhelming, cathartic release. Later that day, after giving a formal statement and being fussed over by a mortified Dr. Evans, Lena was escorted to the top floor of the hospital. The CVICU was a world of quiet beeps and hushed efficiency. Mr. Harrison met her at the door to a private suite. "He's stable and he's very insistent on seeing you," he said with a warm smile. "Are you ready?" Lena nodded, her heart pounding. She walked into the room. Alistair Finch was sitting up in bed, looking frail but with a sharp, clear light in his eyes. The dirty, disheveled clothes were gone, replaced by a standard hospital gown. Wires and tubes connected him to a bank of monitors, but he waved a dismissive hand at them. Technology, he rasped, his voice weak but firm. It can restart a heart, but it can't give you one. He looked at Lena, and his eyes were filled with a profound, humbling gratitude. You, young woman, you have a heart, a magnificent one. I was just doing my job, Lena said softly. It's what any nurse would have done. No, Mr. Finch corrected her. It's what any nurse should have done. But you were the only one who did. You didn't see a bum on the floor. You saw a person in pain. You risked your own safety and dignity for a complete stranger. Do you know how rare that is? Lena didn't know how to respond. She just stood there, the canvas bag, which someone had refilled and returned to her, clutched in her hands. Mr. Finch gestured to Mr. Harrison, who stepped forward with a briefcase. He opened it on the bedside table. I have made some inquiries, Miss Fletcher. Mr. Finch continued. I know about your financial difficulties. The medical debt left by your mother, Amelia. She was a fine nurse here, I'm told. I know about your brother, Marcus, and his ambitions. I know about the eviction notice in your pocket. Lena's eyes widened in shock. Kindness like yours should not have to struggle so hard to survive in this world, Mr. Finch said. So we are going to make some changes. Mr. Harrison slid a folder across the table to her. Miss Fletcher, Mr. Finch has instructed the Sterling Health Foundation to pay off the entirety of your late mother's medical debt and all of your outstanding personal debts, in full. As of an hour ago, you are debt-free. Lena gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. The weight she had been carrying for 2 years, the anchor dragging her down, simply vanished. Furthermore, Mr. Harrison continued, a full scholarship has been established in your name at the State University. It will cover all of your brother's tuition, housing, and expenses for the duration of his undergraduate degree. Tears were now streaming freely down Lena's face. This was impossible. This couldn't be real. And finally, Mr. Finch said, a twinkle in his eye, I'm creating a new position within the Sterling Health Network, Director of the Patient Advocacy and Compassion Initiative. The person in this role will have a mandate to overhaul our training programs, to implement new policies, and to ensure that the character of this institution is judged by its compassion, not its balance sheet. The position comes with a significant budget, a full staff, and a salary of $250,000 a year. He paused, letting the words sink in. The job is yours, Miss Fletcher, if you want it. Lena was speechless. She sank into the visitor's chair, her legs suddenly unable to support her. From the brink of eviction to this, from an empty fridge to a $250,000 salary. It was too much to comprehend. But I'm just a nurse, she finally managed to whisper. You are exactly what this company needs, Mr. Finch said firmly. We have enough administrators who can read a spreadsheet. We need someone who can read a human soul. You've already proven you can do that. Mr. Harrison then placed a checkbook on top of the folder. Mr. Finch has also insisted you accept this as a personal gift, a token of his gratitude. Lena numbly picked up the check. It was made out to her name. The amount written on it was $100,000. She stared at it, the numbers blurring through her tears. It was more money than she had ever imagined seeing in one place. It was safety. It was security. It was a future for her and Marcus. It was a new life. That evening, Lena returned to her small, shabby apartment, a completely different woman. The world outside was the same, but her world had been irrevocably transformed. When Marcus came home, he found her sitting at the small kitchen table, staring into space. "Lena, are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." She looked up at him, a slow, radiant smile spreading across her face. For the first time in years, it was a smile free from worry, free from fear. She slid the job offer letter and the check across the table. Marcus read it, his eyes growing wider with each line. He looked at the check, then back at the letter, then at his sister. Is this real?" Lena just nodded, laughing through her tears. He leapt up, shouting with joy, and wrapped her in a hug so tight she could barely breathe. They clung to each other, laughing and crying, the shared trauma of their struggle finally, blessedly, over. As for Karen Preston, her ruin was as swift and total as Lena's ascension. The story, complete with dozens of cell phone videos of her cruelty and Lena's compassion, went viral overnight. She was a pariah, fired, disgraced, and publicly shamed. She found no sympathy. Her professional life was over. Friends deserted her. Her husband, a man who valued status above all else, filed for divorce within the month. She had judged a man by his clothes and a woman by her skin color, and in a moment of spectacular, ironic justice, her life was destroyed by the very prejudice she had so carelessly wielded. 1 year later. The conference room was bright and airy, with a large window overlooking the city. At the head of the long, polished table sat Lena Fletcher. She was no longer wearing faded scrubs. Today she wore a sharp, stylish navy blue suit, her hair styled in an elegant updo. She radiated a quiet confidence, an authority that came not from a title but from purpose. The core principle of the Fletcher Initiative is simple, she said, addressing the board of directors from another hospital network who had flown in to learn from her. We treat the person, not just the ailment. We lead with empathy. We train our staff to look for the human story behind every patient file. She was a natural leader. The initiative she had built from the ground up was a stunning success. Patient satisfaction scores across the Sterling Health Network had skyrocketed. Staff morale was at an all-time high. The Fletcher Initiative was becoming the new gold standard in compassionate care, studied and emulated by hospitals across the nation. After the meeting, Lena walked through the halls of her hospital. It was the same building, but it felt like a different world. There was a warmth here now, a palpable sense of community and care that had been absent before. She greeted doctors, janitors, and nurses by name, her smile genuine and her presence a source of inspiration. She had moved into a beautiful new home with Marcus, who was thriving in his first year of college. The gratitude box her mother had left her now sat on a polished mantelpiece, and it was overflowing with slips of paper. As she was leaving the hospital that evening, heading to her new, reliable car in the reserved parking spot near the entrance, she saw a young woman hesitating by the main doors. She was a student, judging by the backpack and the textbook clutched to her chest. Her clothes were clean but worn, and her face was etched with an anxiety that Lena recognized instantly. It was the face of someone trying to appear strong when they were terrified, the face of someone worried about their next meal or their bus fare home. Lena could have just walked past. She was a busy woman now, a director with immense responsibilities, but her mother's voice was still the truest compass she had. Be kind. Always. She stopped and approached the young woman with a gentle smile. "Hi, you look a little lost. Are you okay?" The student looked up, startled. "Oh, I'm I'm fine. Just waiting for my bus." Lena's smile widened. She knew the feeling of pretending to be fine. She opened her purse and took out a gift card. "I'm the director of patient advocacy here," she said, her voice kind. "We like to make sure everyone who comes through our doors feels welcome. Here, have a coffee and a meal on us at the cafe while you wait." She pressed the $50 gift card into the young woman's hand. The student's eyes widened and then filled with tears. I can't accept this." "Yes, you can," Lena said softly. "Someone did something similar for me once, a long time ago. Just promise me one thing." "Anything," the student whispered. "Someday, when you're in a position to, you'll do the same for someone else." The student nodded, unable to speak, clutching the card like a lifeline. Lena gave her a final, encouraging smile and walked away, her heart full. The cycle of kindness continued. She had not only changed her own life, but she was now a force for change in the lives of countless others, a living testament to the simple, profound truth that the greatest power in the world is not wealth or status, but a compassionate heart.